and joined the Heritage Party, just to make some sense of it all. In 2023, I managed to be co-opted a seat on the local parish council, and what became clear instantly was the global to local system implementation was happening right in front of my eyes. Very small increments in the towns and villages. I talk to people in the street about politics and straight away they switch off because look what's been happening for so many years. And then a genuine human being comes along and starts speaking about common sense values. The main principles to the party are freedom, family and nation. And I think we can all agree that they're good principles. But it's watching the globalist system being implemented locally that we have to keep an eye out for. Luckily, we can see it, I hope, and then we can do something about it. So, politics is supposed to be boring, but if you use politics to do something positive, it isn't boring. For someone like myself with a rebellious nature, patience is definitely needed, so I'll encourage a bit of patience. The long march through the institutions is clearly at play. The wrong people seem to be in the right positions, making crazy decisions that are affecting every facet of our lives. I personally see this as a conflict between artificial and natural law. A pure example of artificial law to steer and control the natural order of things. We the people must learn this system and use it to turn the boat around. I'm going to finish it on a high. I believe the Heritage Party is a natural common sense solution to this situation. Please feel welcome to come and join us. I now hand you over to Peter Burch, which is our Medway candidate.
As Sean said, my name's Pete Burch. I'm currently an airline pilot and having cut my teeth standing for the Heritage Party at the May the council elections last year. It's my intention to stand as the Heritage Party candidate for Rochester and Stroud at the general election coming up, whenever that may be. Do I want to be an MP? Not at all. There's a reason I chose flying aeroplanes for a living and not politics. But at one point in my career, I worked as a volunteer union representative for the British Airline Pilots Association, and I believe in my time as the company council chairman that I did have some wins and I made a difference. So I now feel that it's time that I need to stand up and make a difference once again, because the country's in a mess, the world's in a mess really, and somebody's got to offer a choice to the British electorate which is different from all the existing main parties, which all have exactly the same underlying policies, and they're all pushing these globalist agendas, none of which will offer a good outcome to us ordinary people. People deserve a genuine alternative and not the fake choice offered by the existing uni party. We have a long-standing tradition in the UK of people voting for centre-right and centre-left parties. The British electorate likes moderate thinking and moderate policies. Unfortunately, none of the existing main parties have remained moderate, and they're all intent on pushing this globalist agenda using crazy so-called environmental policies based on fake climate alarmism. That's all I've got to say really for now. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate you, and I really appreciate David, because as Sean said, David is an inspiration to all of us, and how he manages to stand in front of everybody and smile the way he does, and he goes on television and smiles and on podcasts and everything, and I've just remembered to smile for the first time since I stood here, but anyway, that's all. Thank you very much, and all we can do is try. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming. It's lovely to see you so much here today. I've come from Sussex today, but a couple of hours drive, and it's so lovely the things you said about me, and I think you really covered it all, so I actually don't need to say anything and I can sit down. No, I'm just joking. I got into politics for the first time about 10 years ago, really seriously. And I got into politics because I was concerned about two things. One was the EU and where that was going and how that was taking away freedom and democracy from ordinary people. And those are two buzzwords that everyone talks about. You hear whether it's Liz Truss or Keir Starmer or Boris Johnson or Joe Biden, they all say, yeah, we're going to give you more freedom and more democracy with one hand while they're taking it away with the other. And we've seen that more and more over the last 10 years, specifically in the last 4 years, but I'll come back to that later. So that was one thing I was concerned about, was the EU, where that was going, and particularly something called TTIP. And I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and that's a blast from the past, about this big trade deal they were going to put together with the EU and the USA, which would involve the UK, but then power would go to this unelected court that was going to be created that would just, it was one example of how power was being taken away from the people, and our ancient laws and our ancient freedoms were going to be circumvented by people in the corporatocracy that we've got. The other thing I was concerned about 10 years ago, and why I got into politics, was what was then called political correctness, is now more often referred to as wokery. And every day there's a story in the newspaper or the television about something that's woke that is just absolutely ridiculous. But people have become these little Hitlers, if you like, who think that they've got the power to take away people's freedoms because they can tell people what they can do or they can say, because they don't want people talking about things that they don't like. These are all the words that people use to try to cut down on opinions, to curtail people's freedom of speech and freedom just to speak to each other freely in a pub and have a bit of a joke and have a bit of a banter and maybe tell some jokes about things. We've got a whole wonderful culture of taking the mick out of people, and that's very British. But we're now being told that you can't carry on with that because that's racist or whatever, and there's systemic racism and white people are the problem for everything, and there's white privilege and we have to destroy white privilege because everybody who's not white is systemically oppressed by Britain. And this is the kind of thing, that the ideology that is behind wokery or political correctness. It's called cultural Marxism, and it's been developing for 100 years or more. I wrote a leaflet about it. Some of you have got that leaflet there that tells you a little bit more about it. But this is a very, very dangerous ideology, and it's completely ruining our culture and our society at the moment by actually trying to create new laws which curtail people's free speech and freedom of assembly and freedom to protest and many, many other freedoms that we have. And that was before what started to happen with the lockdown as well. That during that time, I actually did something which was different to the Heritage Party. I worked for the Workers of England Union, which was the only trade union that was standing up for care home workers at the time and trying to keep them their jobs when the government was trying to kick them out of their jobs. How can we have a government, a Tory government, a so-called Conservative government, that is kicking people out of their jobs for their own free will, for choosing what medicine they take into their body or not? And the Labour Party, that is supposed to stand up for the labouring man and the labouring woman, did absolutely nothing and went along with it completely. In fact, if they were in power, they'd have done even worse, or they'd done the same. So you've got Tory, what I call the fake Conservatives, and Labour and the Lib Dems and Greens all have coalesced into a uniparty, and they were pushing lockdowns, experimental injections. They're pushing the climate nonsense on us all, which is another facet of what's going on. They're pushing mass rapid immigration, which is really a specific issue in Kent, because many military-age young men come across the border to Dover and they get picked up by the Coast Guards and the RNLI. And so in 2020, I created the Heritage Party to be a socially conservative party that was going to restore our nation. And as Sean said, our strapline is freedom, family and nation. because we want to keep our ancient freedoms, which are ours by right, and the law should be implemented that everyone has the right and the freedom to do anything unless it is specifically prohibited. But what the powers that be want to do is turn that round and change our law, our system of law, to be a European kind of law where nothing is permitted unless the government makes a regulation that allows you to do it. And that's the problem with the EU, which is why it's culturally, legally and politically completely the opposite of what our British culture is. We have freedom in this country. Freedom is assumed in European law, in the Napoleonic Code. Freedom is not assumed. Your obedience is assumed, and you only have the freedom to act in accordance with regulations. So they made tens of thousands of regulations saying, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. But in British law, I can do anything I want, unless it does harm or causes harm, loss or damage to another living man or a living woman. And with family, the traditional family is the bedrock of society. Now, I'm not against people doing what they want in the privacy of their own home, but we need to respect and uphold the traditional family and support mothers and fathers bringing up their own sons and daughters. But what we have at the moment is a culture in schools and in the NHS and in some political places where you're not even allowed to say the word mother because of the transgender agenda. They're changing the language to try to erase men and women from our language, which is absolutely barking mad and insane. And I think everybody thinks that, and 99% of the population would agree, but you've got the leader of the Labour Party who can't even define a woman properly. I don't know what's gone on with our countries, but someone has planted some insanity in our culture, but we need to speak out against that. And when I first noticed this transgender agenda appearing in about 2015, 2016, I thought it was mad. I thought, this is never going to catch on. This is completely crazy. But it was pushed and pushed and pushed in the mainstream, and then people created laws, and then the Tories introduced relationships and sex education into schools in England. Labour have done the same in Wales. The SNP have done the same in Scotland. And now children are really being affected by disgusting and very confusing and very perverse and very twisted ideology that is going to them at the youngest possible age. And I've always said children should not be taught about anything that is like this. Children should not be sexualized, whether that's heterosexual, homosexual, or transsexual. Let kids be kids. They should not even be introduced to these concepts until they're 12 or 13. And parents should be the ones to do it. Because there are many, many ways in which to act against this whole agenda, which has many, many different facets. And I know in 2020, 2021, many of us went out on the streets to protest at the freedom rallies about freedom. Some people act in the area of art and culture. I know some people are setting up new businesses and new schemes. Some people are writing things for the media, and that's wonderful. But we need to get involved in politics as well, because it's Westminster that makes the laws that are coming on and being imposed on us. And at our local level, the local councils are local government. And a lot of people don't realise the importance of local government. They actually have direct power over your life here in Maidstone, here in Kent, and in your parishes, to certain things like 15-minute cities, which are coming in many places, these low traffic neighbourhoods where there's road blockages being brought in, roads being closed all over the place for something called active travel, where the councils want to encourage walking and cycling, but they do that at the expense of vehicles, motor vehicles, being allowed to travel where they used to travel. So they want to block off roads, which is going to harm individuals, particularly people who need a car, like carers and disabled people, and businesses who need to drive their cars and their business vans to do trades work. They're all going to be harmfully affected. They're all going to be harmed and affected negatively for walking and cycling. And many of these new walking and cycling paths the councils put in are never actually used by anybody. It's just a complete waste of money that makes a lot of money for the contractors, but goes along with the agenda of actually waging a war on motorists. So what can you do as a person in Kent? You can get involved in politics, and it's hopefully with the Heritage Party I'm making a way for anybody to get involved in it. And we've got people here who have stepped up more recently, like Sean here and Pete, who are candidates who are going to stand in the election in this year. It's this year. There's going to be a general election sometime in 2024, and I think we've got another potential candidate here as well. Pretending. Anyway, so we've maybe got 3 potential candidates, and maybe some of you as well will like to join in. So there are 17 constituencies in Kent for Westminster. That's actually going up this year. With the new border changes, they've added an extra constituency. This is the time to step up, because if not now, when? Things are so bad in this country with all of the things that are happening. The mass immigration, the attack on children, the ramping up of wars, the masses of national debt that we've got, which is ruining our economy, and so many other things. They want to kill cash and bring in CBDCs if they possibly can do. Even if you don't want to stand as a candidate, you can support other people who are standing as candidates, or you can think about standing in some of the local elections, because there are local elections this year in Maidstone district and Tunbridge Wells district. Only those 2. There are 13 districts in Kent, but only 2 of them have got elections this year. So if you live in Maidstone or Tunbridge Wells, there's local elections coming up. There's the Kent County Council elections in 2025. So there'll be elections everywhere then, not Medway because that's a unitary authority, but everywhere else in Kent. And as Sean mentioned earlier, there are also parishes, and parishes are a level below the district council, but they're so important because Sean's now a parish. It's a parish, isn't it? Parish councillor.
It's very good training.
Yes. Fantastic training, and you just can't. I think what you found is you expect your local councils to be about local services. You expect them to be about maintaining the parks and fixing the potholes and stocking the libraries and running youth services and supporting charities for old age people and things like that. That's what you expect councils to do. But I think what you found from what you tell me is that you're up against the woke agenda and you're up against the climate agenda and how those things are manifest. And the way the climate agendas manifest, as I've said before, is it's really a war on cars. They want 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. They want road blockages all over the place. They want to go into schools and teach people about climate ideology, that they're all going to die because the world's going to be fried, because they've got to be scared of carbon dioxide, even though carbon dioxide is a harmless and natural gas, and we're all breathing it out as we speak. So we don't really need to be afraid of carbon dioxide, but that's what the climate alarmists want to go into schools and tell kids that they need to be afraid of, because the climate agenda wants to classify old historic buildings that are part of our heritage as harmful to the climate because they create too many emissions. So what they do is that they run them down, they let them get dilapidated, and then they say, oh, there's this old building, it emits lots of carbon dioxide, I don't know how it does that, but it's in a poor state anyway, so we need to knock it down. And then build some horrible multi-storey cubic monstrosity for people to live in and lose their soul. This is our heritage. If we lose all our own building, all our old buildings, all our history, we lose our soul. You know, Solzhenitsyn said, in order to destroy a people, you must first sever their roots. And this is what's happening in real time in our country. Councils and corporations are deliberately attacking and knocking down our heritage. we're going to lose it if we don't stand up for it and we don't fight for it. So that's what I want to do, and that's what I'm doing, that's what Sean's doing, that's what Pete's doing, that's what Tim's doing. And I hope that many of you will also join me as well in doing that. Put yourself forward to stand for councils and restore our nation, save our nation, fight for our freedom, for our families, for our nation with the Heritage Party. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.